Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. It's the Teams Podcast, round 15. What a crazy, crazy afternoon we have had. We've got some serious SuperCoach decisions to make this week. And joining me is the mastermind himself, Ian Maybanks. Mate, what a crazy day.
It's wild, mate. I was telling you before, I just checked the filters on the SuperCoach stats to check who was left, and we've got Pappenhausen's been gone all year, Fifita's gone, Cleary's gone, Dylan Brown gone, Latrell gone. Of the top six highest value players, only Nico's left standing. It's just wild. There's so much money to throw around. Yeah.
Absolutely wild. And I guess the biggest shock today was David Fifita, not named for the Titans. He suffered some delayed concussion symptoms. Only got 30-odd minutes on the weekend for a score in the teens. So perhaps we should have seen this coming, but it was a little bit of a shock when that news came through from the Titans today. I think he's a hold. We want to wait and see what happens here. You want to see what happens in Origin if he does play. And I think he is so good in that position that it would take a brave person to sell him.
I mean, he's 10 points clear of the next best in the position. He's clearly the best. If you've got him, you might want to hold, but I'm looking at the fixtures ahead. He's not playing this week. 16, he's probably back in Origin. 17, he's got another game backing up. Will Holbrook wheel him out for 30 minutes? If so, he loses another chunk. He might only play around 18 because then 19 he's in Origin again. So you're looking at a guy who might only play one game out of the next four. You might want to take the 200K he's made and you could come back to him. It depends how your trades are set up, but, you could come back to him and he's 700K, post-Origin, and you've got 200K you've spread out elsewhere. So one to consider.
The other news we were expecting, but it still hurts nonetheless, is Nathan Cleary. Here he is, the injury over the weekend, out for 6 weeks. So right now we're going to discuss the best replacements. He is the second most popular player in SuperCoach. So obviously a lot of people are looking to sell. I think we both agree that he is a sell. With 6 weeks, you can't be holding on to him. But I've got the list of the most popular replacements, and all of them, except one, happen to be in serious Origin contention for the New South Wales Blues in the upcoming game. I'm going to start with Mitchell Moses. I think he is the best of the options. He can go massive. He's got a great run coming up for the Eels. But Gus Gould coming out today and saying that he should be the Origin halfback, and you know how close Gus is to the selection panel, including Fittler and Joey Johns. You just think, I can't make that decision this week. I have to just take the hit this week, play someone else, and then wait for Moses next week once we know the Origin teams.
Yeah, I think Moses' kicking game is suited to Origin. If I wanted to go Moses, I would probably wait a week. I guess it might depend how you set up. If you've still got Nico, then you just play him this week, and then you can deal with Cleary fire next week and go for Moses. Moses, I think, is definitely, if he plays all those fixtures, he's the best option for me. It's just that risk of will he get in the Bluestone.
Yeah, I don't want to move on him too quickly. I can cover him with someone like Katoni Staggs in a different position, so I might be doing that this week. And then just waiting to see what the hell Freddie Fittler decides as he's sitting on his yoga mat on Monday morning to see what he actually comes up with. Next on our list is Nicho Hynes. Now, look, you'd assume he is in the Blues team. So with his bye schedule coming up, it's not great for SuperCoach. So you're looking at bringing in a guy who, yes, he'll play this week and probably do well, as he's done almost every week this year. But then you've got a seriously tough stretch. Oh, sorry, not a tough stretch of games, but he's basically not playing NRL from then until the end of the Origin series.
Yeah, it's with Latrell and Cleary out, like Nico, as I said at the start, he's the last big gun standing. So I think most people will probably captain him this week against the Storm, who looked terrible against the Cows. I don't have Nico. I sold him thinking Storm away is going to be a tough one. after seeing how they played against the Cows, I'm getting a little bit worried about what Nico might do. The edges were flimsy last week. I think as a captain option, see there, and 18 against the Dragons, maybe you could bring him back knowing he's the best captaincy option in those 2 rounds, even 16, 17 aside, because 16 you'll be able to cover probably already. So I think if you don't have Nico, Cleary to Nico is probably worth considering, given that he'll be your captain in 2 of those.
Yep. Moving on to Sean Johnson, who's the only guy on this list who's not in Origin contention. He's wound back the clock this year. This is a try from the weekend. He's in seriously good form. He plays this week, but then he's got the bye next round, so he doesn't come without issues either. Plus, he has a long history of hamstring, quad, groin injuries, etc. How long is it before one of those pop?
Yeah, I think he had 6 runs last week. That's the most he's had all season. So, he turned it on last week. I think this fixture this week's going to be pretty tough. Raiders will be right up for Croker's 300th, and then he hits a bye. So I don't really like the next 2 rounds for him. He's been playing, really well this year, but I think I prefer other options.
Next up, I've got Cody Walker. Now, I know he's not in the same position as Cleary, but if Dylan Brown is out, and look, that's still up in the air. Cody he's just been on fire the last couple of weeks, and this is him scoring against the Titans over the weekend. I like him. I own him already. He's been in the VC and C reckoning for me for the last few weeks. But in Origin contention, I think you just have to wait a week and see what happens. There is a strong push for him to play Origin with Adam Reynolds at halfback, Latrell at fullback, Cook at hooker, and you just reunite the entire Rabbitohs spine. It makes some sense on some sort of level, and who knows, that might be the thing that Freddie and Joey go for on a whim.
Yeah, Cody's in hot form, but yeah, I think if you've got him already, you knew he was going to miss 16. So if you're going to come to him now, I think, just wait and see. Like, he's going to have the bye next week. I think the Dragons this week, again, is a good fixture. The Cows after is a good fixture for him. Warriors and Dogs after that. So, yeah, the form's incredible. Latrell out means more ball for Cody, more action for Cody this week again. So expect another really big score for him. But I don't know, if I didn't have him, I probably wouldn't be going there just yet.
And the final guy on our list is Matt Burton. Now, also in Origin contention, we're hearing. But look, if he misses out, he's got a great run for SuperCoach in terms of his bye schedule, but he's got some really tough games coming up. I know those opposition, some of them will be depleted via Origin. In any case, look, he's in good form recently after a slow start, but I just can't quite get around getting Matt Burton into my team, even with that dual positioning.
Yeah, he's had 9 try assists in the last 4, so he's found some good form. But yeah, to me, I think he'll still be in and around that blue squad there somewhere. So I kind of expect he will be missing those rounds, so he's not on my radar.
And finally, on Cleary replacements, I want to each of us pick a bit of a smoky. For me, it's Kalen Ponga. And I know he's not in Cleary's position, but as I mentioned, if Dylan Brown is out, and we'll get to him in a sec, he could be a replacement for him. Or if you have the right duels, I think Ponga could be the guy who really goes on a run. He's ruled himself out for the rest of the Origin series, plays the next bye, and then he's got a tough bye coming up in the final Origin week. But other than that, looks like a pretty good run for him. He looks motivated. I know he's one head knock away from another rest. But I think at that price, it's definitely a risk worth taking.
Yeah. Kalen has shown some decent form in the last 2 games. So if you want to have a wild swing there, that's definitely one you could have a crack at. The 2 that I sort of pinpointed, I snapped up Jerome Hughes last week, upgraded Xavier Coates as my backup half. To him, I think he's dipped down to low 500s. The Storm, they've got the Sharks, then the Tigers on the bye round, then Manly with Turbo DCE backing up. I expect that Tigers and that Manly game, he can jag some pretty big attacking points and shoot back up closer to his starting price. The other one, if you want to go real wild, is Brandon Wakeham. The Tigers have found form. He's kicking goals, 100 plus versus the Cows, 58 versus the Raiders. Gold Coast Titans, worst defence in the league this round. So if you just wanted to take a wild swing at a super pod, you could go there. He's got dual positioning as well, so...
Yep, why not? And you did mention Tom Trbojevic there. I'm going to run through the winners from the teams now. Turbo has had that Category 1 concussion from Origin overturned. It's now not deemed a Category 1 and he can play this weekend. Supercoach-wise, it means he plays this week, but then obviously is off probably for Origin if he makes it, which we're assuming he will. Then he's got a tough backup and another bye coming too, or another Origin round coming as well. So, Supercoach-wise, I think the right move was still to sell a couple of weeks ago. But having said that, he's averaged 77 this year, even with all the bad press about how bad a form he's in.
Yeah, mate, like that, the last game he was out, 165, that's the third best score of anybody this season. So, like, he's still got the high ceiling that, maybe only... maybe Cleary, Nico sort of can match him with, Teddy. So, if you've got him, you definitely... A home game against the depleted Dolphins, man, you'd be tempted to give him the C this week. If not the BC, I reckon he can do some real damage there.
Yep, he certainly loves Four Pines Park, that's for sure. JacobCarr is back. He was the most popular purchase last week. Unfortunately got ruled out, so hopefully you're able to change that trade. It's an elbow injury. He's been named. Hopefully he plays. Look, I wouldn't be going out of my way to buy him, though, given the trouble he's had, first with his knee and now with the elbow.
Yeah, I think there's so many good options in the centres. Carraz was red hot at the start of the season. The work he was doing, and he was picking up, tackle bust and offloads galore. He hasn't shown that same form since he's come back from the knee injury. So I'd probably look elsewhere. I think there's other options you can pick up. He's definitely, bottomed out in price, so he's good value. But yeah, I think there's other guys as well.
I'm just going to quickly mention Dylan Brown. So he has been named this week, even with the charges that he's facing. He's in front of court tomorrow, so we might get a decision on whether or not he gets stood down tomorrow. It might even happen before then, but that's a big watch for Supercoaches given how popular he is and how good his buy schedule is coming up as well. Valence Tafare at the cult hero from up at the Dolphins. I was hoping that he'd get named at centre with Brenko Lee in a little bit of doubt, but Lee has been named and Tafare is in the 17 jersey. So that popular cheapie for now looks like he's coming off the bench. But if Brenko Lee does get ruled out, that could mean Tafare in at centre, where the last game he played was his debut and he cracked out 2 tries and 90-odd points.
Yeah, and that Manly edge is one of the weakest in the comp right now. That's been points galore down there. So if he plays, I'll be very interested. So just watch that one. I think he could put on a big score there, but the alternative is that he comes off the bench and he gets 4 points again like he did. So, it's yeah. I don't think you need to rush to get him because the BE is, 36 or something. So, if he does play, his price isn't going to skyrocket, even if he does put on a real number because he's got that 4 sitting in there still.
Yeah, the thing that always sticks in my head with Tafare is a couple of weeks ago when you were on the show and you said that Wayne Bennett has said he's only going to play 10 games this year. And with his propensity to play him off the bench as well, you'd think that that puts a line through him as a Supercoach buy. Of course, if you're on already and you're riding that wave, then certainly he's a hold from here. Jeremy Marshall-King's back, which is good news for people who sold Harry Grant or Damien Cook for him over Origin. And Jared Croker, he's back after that rest last week, so he'll be playing his 300th game in front of the home crowd there in Canberra. Now for the losers from the teams, I'll mention Nathan Cleary. Latrell Mitchell also not named and reportedly in big doubt for Origin too.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? I sold him last week and went to Buller. That worked out fantastic for me. So I think if you're still holding on to Latrell, you need to let him go because he's going to miss this week, Origin 16, Origin 19, and then the Bunnies by 20. So I only plays 2 of the next big chunks. So I think, yeah, sad to let him go because he's done so well this year. But, yeah, you've got to cut him loose and use that money elsewhere.
Cameron Murray also not named, but it looks like he will play Origin. In any case, given that he misses this week, I mean, he's been a popular sell for many months really now. And I think this just locks it in with his groin injury over the weekend. He does finally have to go, and he is the 3rd most sold player. Yeah,
let him go. I think we talked about him last time, how his game wasn't translating to SuperCoach numbers. It's a guy to maybe revisit post-Origin. He'll probably be mid-400 something, you know. He'd probably be a guy you can just drop in on the back of your bench there and hope he returns to form in the back end of the season. But, yeah, let him go.
Another forward who I reckon is a sell is Jack Belin, who was a popular buy-period purchase, but he's out this week with that concussion suffered last week. And then at your Maroons, Tom Gilbert's been confirmed that he's out for the season. So big news there for your boys.
Yeah, I think seen today, Pete Bedell's latest chat with Billy Slater. He's got a good yarn there where Billy name checks Jermaine Hopgood, Corey Horsburgh.
Yeah.
As 2 of his favourite guys to watch this year. So I've got the horse. I know you were looking at Hopgood very closely and very keen this week. You'd think, you know, Hopgood's so young, he maybe isn't up for Origin straight away, but Slater's showing no reluctance to throw these guys in. So it kind of, if I had Hopgood plans this week, I'd maybe just watch him, maybe just watch another week and wait and see. Just same sort of approach to Moses we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you read that story from Pete Bedell and there are some really good quotes in there from Slater saying how much he loves both of those guys. But he also mentions about 7 or 8 other players who are in contention for those spots as well, including someone like Felice Kafusi, who's played Origin and been there before.
Yep.
So, look, I'll believe it when I see it if Jermaine Hopgood and Corey Horsburgh actually make that side. In any case, it is enough for me to just hold my horses a little bit this week and just relax a little bit, just to wait and see what the hell actually happens with these Origin teams coming up. I'll move on to some cheapie. Oh, actually, I'll go Ruben Garrick on the at centre this week with Brad Parker out. He's out until round 18, so it looks like Garrick could be at centre for a number of weeks.
Yeah, I'm not concerned this week because Turbo's there, so he'll still get good ball, and I expect they'll put on points. But if he's playing at centre in some of those other fixtures coming up, I think that's a bit of a worry. It'd be one to just keep an eye on, I reckon.
And then finally, of course, the Cowboys are on the bye. Val Holmes is the big guy here. He's by far the most popular and cracked out a big 150 on the weekend. So in some serious form, but, you know, he'll miss the next 2. It makes it a tough decision. I know a lot of people would have been looking to sell this week, but it's a tough decision now that he's just banged out that 150.
I think given the amount of other fires there are, that Val missing 2 weeks isn't as big a problem as Cleary missing 6 or Fifita only playing 1 of the next 5. That if I could hold Val, if I had enough quality centre coverage otherwise, I don't imagine many people own too many Cowboys other than Holmes. So you've probably got enough coverage in your squad this week. You might be able to get away with holding him, in which case the next game he plays, his value is going to rocket again, and you've probably got a guy that most people have let go and will struggle to come back to. You know, he's down to 20% ownership, I saw. So for a guy that was the most owned centre to start the season, you might have sort of more exclusive access to him than you did previously, which is a good thing.
Got some questions coming through. Send them through on Facebook or on YouTube. Good one from Luke, who is asking Ray Stone in for Sonny Luke. What are your thoughts? With all the injuries there at the Dolphins, looks like he's set to play lock, and I think he's named it lock, and big minutes as well with the injuries that they have.
So 2 weeks ago, he played lock and crunched out decent numbers there. Last week, Jeremy Marshall-King was out, so he went into hooker and punched out a 60-odd there. So, he's a guy when he's on the field, he's super busy and he gets through a lot of work. I'll be interested to see where he falls when Kaufusi comes back from suspension into that Dolphins team, because earlier in the season we had Lemuelu on the edge, Kaufusi on the right, and then Kenny Bromwich played through the middle. And then Stone did fall back to the bench again. So, if Stone's there and he's starting, he's good, but long-term prospects, I'm not so sure. I think if you picked him up last week, you got a 50K bump and you'll probably get another nice bump again. But going to him now, when Kaufusi comes back, they've got the bye next week, then, yeah, you'll probably only get one more good game with him at lock, I'm thinking.
Yep. And a lot of what you're saying there is also relevant for Connolly Lemuelu, who's obviously really popular this year too. I'm going to move on to some cheapies to monitor. Xavier Coates, thoughts on him? Base is non-existent, but he's a winger at the Storm, and we know that the Storm can score some serious tries. He's come down to 270-odd K, which is absolutely crazy for him. I think he's probably the cheapie of the week this week, given that he covers this upcoming bye. Is it the best cheapie we've ever seen? Definitely not. He basically needs a hat-trick to hit his break-even every week. But in any case, I think that's possible in that Storm team.
I think he was around this low 300K price last year, and a lot of us picked him up as cheapies, and you just stayed him there. And eventually he scored a hat-trick in a couple games in a row and he rocketed up to 500 and something. You get rid of him. You could definitely do that. He's low. Look, you probably don't want to play him every week, but there's some argument to make that he'll eventually make some cash for you if you just be patient with it. And he gives you a buy number, but I'm not convinced. He's had a hat-trick this year for 76 points, which is, terrible.
Well, look, one cheapie who does have some base in him is Junior Pogger, I believe is how you pronounce it, from the Roosters. Pretty good on the weekend. So 53 points. There was a try and a line break in there. But what I liked was 17 runs and 5 tackle busts. He's retained his spot this week, even with Tupu back into that team. The suspension of Joseph Suaalii definitely helps there. You don't need to get on this round, but I think for next week, he looms as the cheapie of the week for next week.
Yeah. Have you had a look at his numbers in New South Wales Cup?
Yeah, insane. 14 tries in 11 games and big work rate, yeah.
It's even more recent. Since he moved to the wing in the last 5 games, because he started in the centres there, 4 tries, 2 tries, 2 tries, 3 tries, 2 tries, 13 tries in 5 games.
Wow.
Try on debut. 14 tries in his last 6 games. Fantastic. He's earned that position. So it's not like he's a cheapie coming in, I think, to cover an injury. I think when Suaalii's back, this guy's offering much more than what Corey Allen's giving. I'd expect he's a decent shout at holding a position.
Yeah. I think so. Wait until next week. But look, if you have to go early on him, the job security does look decent. I didn't realise that he was 27 as well. So he's been around for a while. One of these mature age rookies that we see coming through who can often be so good in SuperCoach. Another guy who fits that bill as well is Richie Kenner. He's been around to a few clubs, including not your Broncos. Sorry,
up this way.
I bracket you together. I know you live in Brisbane. You're not a Broncos fan, but he's now at the Rabbitohs. Made his season debut on the weekend. Pretty cheap price. Scored a try. He's a winger in a good team. The base is not nearly as good as Pogger, and he does have that bye coming up next week. So I think he will be the cheapie of the week for round 17, but I wouldn't be moving now.
Yeah, just wait and watch. You know, if he holds that spot on the Bunnies wing, that Bunnies wing is a good spot to be. He'll jag some tries and make some money for you. There's good fixtures coming for them still after the bye. So, yep, definitely one to watch. There's one other cheapie there, Samuela Fainu for Manly. Now,
Yeah.
he's listed as a front rower, but he's playing second row for them. They're down a few troops in that space. So the last bye around, he played 77 minutes there and racked up 40-something points. So, like, if you're looking for a front row downgrade, he's a good guy, and probably Tommy will get dual status, given he's been only playing on the second row come the next updates.
Yep, you'd think those
Like, he'll
updates...
get duals and he'll cover you for the next buy, downgrade. There's a lot of things to like on him.
Those updates will be coming in round 18, by the way, so we'll have some stories out pretty soon on who will and won't and who's in contention and whatnot. Let's run through each of the games. Titans v the Tigers. No Fifita or for the Titans, but Brimson is back, so he could be a sneaky pod for round 17. At the Tigers, no changes for him. Obviously, a really Supercoach relevant team with their bye schedule, so keen to know if you'd get on Jareem Buller at his current price, and also maybe a sneaky steer on John Bateman as well.
Yeah, I picked up Buller last week. I was late to the party, but the party's still going. Like, yeah. I think his numbers are incredible. The fixtures are good. If you're not there yet, if you're still holding Latrell, I think you can still go down to Buller this week. I think he's still got more money to make, and the points are fantastic. And given he's got the Titans in the first game, you've got to consider him as a VC option. Bateman, love him. The thing I liked last week is he moved into the middle in the second half, and he was very busy, hands on the ball. He's a guy that makes things happen the more touches he gets. So I like that move. If Tigers continue to do it, that can only mean more Supercoach, more touches, he'll make things happen. IPAP looks really good too. Low 500s now. He almost got a try on the weekend. Crashed over, got held up. I thought he scored for sure, but that edge, of course, for the Titans is absolutely woeful, and IPAP's going at it this week. So I think the try he missed last week, he'll probably get this week. I think if Bateman's out of reach for you, IPAP, very good option to pick up.
Really Supercoach relevant team, as I said. Brandon Wakeham, you mentioned before. Tommy Talau could even be a little sneaky cheapie after that ridiculous try that he scored over the weekend where he busted try assist, where he busted 6 tackles and put Jareem Buller over. Raiders v the Warriors. The Raiders have got Croker and Whitehead back into that team. With Whitehead's return, it means that Pasami Saulo goes back to the bench. So last week's most popular cheapie, unfortunately, back to the bench. And then at the Warriors, not much doing there. They've got a debutant in the centres who I'll be keeping an eye on. He's in for Rocco Berry, so he could be a cheapie down the track. At the Sea Eagles, Turbo is back. Garrick to centre, that's the big news there. And Samuela Fainu is definitely a guy to look out for. Dolphins have Wallace, Milford and Gilbert all out. Wallace and Milford with suspension, Gilbert out for the season. But they do have Jeremy Marshall-King back into that team, which is a big boost for a lot of super coaches.
Yeah, I think he's been probably the form hooker. I think he's really developed his game. He's one of the guys that's kicked on under the Dolphins. So if you picked him up, he's a guy that's getting points, attacking points and the consistent base. So, I think he's probably the pick of hookers at the moment.
Yep, and moving on to the Dragons v the Rabbitohs. That's at Cogra Oval. Dragons have got Belin definitely out, but Jack Bird is there in reserve, so he could come into that team. At the Rabbitohs, no Latrell, no Arrow, and no Cameron Murray. So 3 serious outs for them. Alex Johnston has been pretty popular in the last few weeks. I think that the ship sailed. He's got the bye coming up next week. What are your thoughts on him as a buy for now?
I think while Latrell's out, it's all Cody, and Cody feeds his mate AJ. I put the VC loop on AJ last week and reaped the benefits. I think AJ is a good guy to have. The bunnies are humming. This is the kind of form he goes through every year. I think the break even's still low, so he's there's the bye up next, and then the bye again in round 20. So he does miss 2 of those, but if you can cover it elsewhere, I think he's a guy who's going to get a lot of tries in the fixtures that he does play. So, yeah, check your numbers, but if you can make it happen, you can do it.
Broncos v the Knights. The Broncos have got Cobbo back into that team. The Knights, not a great deal doing there, but Kalen Ponga and Dane Gagai are probably 2 guys who stand out from a Supercoach perspective. At the Roosters, Suali'i is out with suspension, as I mentioned. That means Corey Allen-Centre, Tupu to the wing, and our man Pogga stays on the other wing. The other thing I'll point out there is that Billy Smith retains his centre spot. A lot of people are selling him this week, and the break-even is 60, so it makes sense from some level, but he does play next week's bye. He's going to be a crucial number for that week. Yeah,
I think so. It's a guy you definitely need for the bye. I think just hold him, even though he's got a tough break-even. I have no idea who's kicking goals for the Roosters this week.
Yeah, it's a good point.
I'm looking down there and I can't see who it is. I hope it's not Tedesco, because I've got Eddie in my team, and that would be minus points because he's bloody terrible. So, I don't know, can Billy Smith kick goals? Let him do it with some extra points.
I mean, I know Luke Keary's done it before, not very well. So, look, it's a good point, actually. We'll wait and see what happens there.
Well, they're playing the Panthers, so they might not have many shots anyway.
100%. Cogger is in for Cleary at the Panthers. That's the only change for them. Storm v the Sharks. Justin Olam out with a concussion. That means Grant Anderson comes into the team. And then at the Sharkies, they've got McInnes back on the bench in number 14. The Sharks are a popular Supercoach team right now because they've got a good bye schedule. Is there anyone standing out for you there?
I think if you're looking to offload Fifita, you can pretty easily go down to Nakora. He's going to play all these games. He's a Kiwi, no origin risk. Great form. Any of the backs. I'm thinking back this matchup last year. Talakai and Mulatalo carved up the Storm last year. It might look tough on paper, but this expansive style that Sharks play really is a sort of play that can carve up the Storm, who invite teams around them. So any of these guys, I think, particularly Mulatalo, Talakai, they seem to prefer to go that way at the moment. Ramian had a good game on the weekend, lots of tackle busts, still hasn't had the hit of tries. He's probably the guy that hasn't had the big jolt of tries like we were talking about with Staggs earlier. That, if he gets his game where he gets his share of it, then he's going to just rocket up in price. So he's probably the cheapest of them at the moment. So,
final game of the round is Bulldogs v the Eels. The Doggies, they've named Reid Marnie despite that big head knock from last week. Carraz has been named as well, which is big news for Supercoach. At the Eels, Dylan Brown's there, as I mentioned. Regan Campbell-Gillard is back too, and Hopgood retains his spot at lock, even with Campbell-Gillard back into that team. So some good Supercoach news there. I'm going to take some questions until the end of the show. A lot of people are saying Teddy's going to kick this weekend in the chat, so we'll keep an eye on that for late mail and try and confirm it for you at some stage. Question: Cleary to Moses and Croker to Buller, or do I just do Cleary to Walker? What are your thoughts there?
I think if you're feeling confident enough that Moses doesn't make Origin, then go for it. I think he's the best option. If you want to make it happen this week, then I'd definitely Croker to Buller and Cleary to Moses is good for me.
There's lots of love for Brandon Wakeham in the chat as well. And look, I think that's about it. It's been a really eventful day in Supercoach land. It's been great to have you on, the mastermind Ian Maybanks. We'll catch you for the Game Day podcast at 11 a.m. on Thursday. We'll see you then. Thanks, mate.
All right, cut them loose.
Good stuff, as always.